The Carolina Hurricanes are going back to the Eastern Conference Final for the second time in 5 years as they eliminated the New Jersey Devils last night in Game 5 of their second round series. Myself and Andrew discuss all of that game and look ahead to the conference final in this episode of Locked On Hurricanes.
Your Locked On Hurricanes, your daily podcast on the Carolina Hurricanes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey there, Caniacs. I'm your host, Jared Ellis, and you're listening to Locked On Hurricanes on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And once again, I'm joined by my co-host, Andrew Schnittker. How you feeling today, Andrew?
I'm feeling pretty good. The Hurricanes, for the first time since 2019, are going to the Eastern Conference Final. An exciting overtime win over the New Jersey Devils last night. Far and away the closest game of the series, which you called it. You said that yesterday was not going to be a blowout, and it was not. This Hurricanes team it's starting to feel like something special.
It really, really is. I saw you tweeted about it last night, but they are the epitome of the next man up mentality. They are without Andre Svechnikov, without Max Petrie, without Teuvo Teravainen, and guys are just stepping up all across the lineup. And let's dive into this game last night because, like you said, I predicted it would not be a blowout, and the Devils came out hot, and the Hurricanes were able to weather the storm for the most part. Definitely in that first period, it did feel at times like the Hurricanes were just holding on, doing all they could to hold off the Devils. Freddie Anderson, he made some really, really good saves. Brady, and just because the Hurricanes ended this period down 1-0 does not mean that they didn't have some good chances. Brady Shea had a really, really nice chance early on. And his shot ended up bouncing off the post. It came off a turnover from Palat, and I just noticed in the notes it autocorrected to Pilates. But
I wondered what you're going for there.
yeah, the Hurricanes did have some nice chances early on, and Freddie Anderson did make some really nice saves as well.
Yeah, I thought that Frederick Anderson, other than game 3, had a really, really good series. It was another one of those games where he made the key saves at key moments and kind of held it down in those stretches when the Devils were really pushing play and taking it to the Canes and kept them in the game, gave them a chance to win. That's all you can ask for from your goalie. And I thought once again that he was really good last night.
Yeah, he was very, very good last night. And, Schmid was really good for the Devils as well. He made a really, really nice save on Jesper Fast, who we'll talk more about later. And definitely as the period progressed, it did feel like the Hurricanes were building some momentum, but ultimately New Jersey was able to strike first. They made some really, really nice passes through the Hurricanes to get Dawson Mercer up to the net and for the goal there. And it did, kind of, I guess, take some momentum away from the Hurricanes because it did feel like they were building something up to there. But, you get on into the second period and the Hurricanes realize, like, hey, we got to get in this fast because, you don't want a repeat of what you had in the first few games with, the team that gets that first goal. They just tend to run up the score real quick and just get a bunch of goals in quick succession. And Jacob Slavin ended up tying it up early in the second for the Hurricanes. And Jordan Martinook did have the assist on that, and that was his 10th point of the series. And with that, he finished the second round, of course, with 10 points in 5 games, and that tied Bates Battaglia in the 2002 Stanley Cup final or Eastern Conference semifinal, excuse me, where he had 10 points in 6 games against Montreal, and Corey Stillman in the conference final back in 06, where he had 10 points in 7 games. So big congratulations to Jordan Martinook on that. And if you figure, he probably would have took sole possession of that record had the Hurricanes not been able to clinch here.
Yeah, I think so. I think he's a guy who had all kinds of momentum. Was only going to keep it going. Great to see him on the board again. Probably have to call him the series MVP for the
Oh,
Hurricanes.
absolutely.
Just with all the plays that he was able to make, all the big goals that he scored, just the spark that he gave them really every time he was on the ice. And I mean, he does that anyway. It's just as Rod Brind'amour would say, the pucks were going in for him in this series. But that was really cool to see him get rewarded for everything that he does well for this team.
Yeah, and it was a really nice goal by Jacob Slavin as well. There was obviously they kicked it back out to him, and there was a lot of traffic in front of the net. So the fact that he was able to get it go through was really really nice. But unfortunately, the Hurricanes did end up giving the lead back to New Jersey as Jesperi Kotkaniemi ended up taking a penalty, and the Devils got a very very quick power play goal from Timo Meyer, and that ended up giving the Devils a lot of momentum. And that's what I was kind of talking about earlier, where it really just felt like they were hanging on for dear life, doing everything they could to not go down 2 goals, keep it just at 1 goal. And eventually, they end up getting a whistle. I forget what it was for. But that kind of stop play and all that momentum that the Devils were building, it just kind of leveled off, and everyone was able to regroup. And I think that was really, really key for the Hurricanes, because shortly after that, Brent Burns from the point again, like in the previous game, and that ended up, giving the Hurricanes a lot of momentum. So really, if the whistle doesn't blow there in the second period, we could be talking about a different game, because the Devils were pushing hard. They were playing like a team with their season on the line.
Well, and you look too, not long before the Burns goal, somebody, I think it was Jack Hughes, maybe misses a wide open net. I mean,
Oh,
a
yeah, he
wide
landed on his
open
face too.
net for the Devils. Um, that would have made it 3-1, and you wonder what's happening from there. That's probably a play that the Devils fans and players are going to see in their heads a lot this offseason. But that's hockey. That's how the breaks go sometimes. We've certainly seen that happen to the Hurricanes. I mean, Jesper Foss
Mhm,
missed a wide open net in the first period. I think that would have given the Hurricanes a 1-0 lead. But yeah,
mhm,
I mean, I'm kind of sitting there at that point, like you got to just like get out of this period only down a goal.
mhm.
And then Brent Burns comes up with that last minute goal to tie it, and then the momentum shifts, the momentum swings, because if you're the Devils, you feel like, man, we really should be up at least 1 goal, if not more now, and instead the Hurricanes have it tied.
Yeah, and they ended up obviously going into the third period tied up, and that was really really big, because at that point, you kind of feel like whoever scores the next goal in the third period is going to win the game. And we will dive into the third period and overtime right after this quick break, folks. For a championship team, it's all about making sure every player is the perfect fit. We're seeing that right now with the Carolina Hurricanes, and it's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So the next time you need parts and accessories, head to eBay Motors. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, you can be sure every part you need fits just right the first time around. Just add your ride to My Garage and look for the green check to know that the part will fit or your money back. Because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop on eBay Motors. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the parts are right. Just guaranteed. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available for U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. Now, the third period was tough, to say the least. The Devils came out really, really hot. Again, they're playing like a team with their season on the line, because it was. And, like I said, it kind of felt like whoever, you know, got that next goal was winning the game, whether it happened in the third period or obviously, as we'll get to in overtime. But eventually, the Hurricanes were able to find their game in the third period, especially towards the back half, and they were applying a lot of pressure to the Devils, just like the Devils were doing to the Hurricanes. And it was, again, very, very tight. And one thing that was really nice, especially once the Hurricanes kind of really found themselves in the third, was that they limited the Devils to just 3 shots in the third period. And that's a testament to the Hurricanes defense. Jacob Slavin, Brent Burns, Brady Shea, Brett Pesci, Shane Gostisbehere, Jalen Chatfield, and all the forwards as well. They really, really knew what they had to do in this third period and just suffocate the Devils and not let them get anything. And that was really, really key for them here in the third period.
Well, and I think too, they talk about sometimes the best defense is a good offense and good puck possession, and I thought that was a lot of the case for the Hurricanes limiting the Devils in that third period. Because I mean, if you go back and watch it, the Hurricanes had the puck a lot. I mean, as that third
Mhm.
period, they kind of had the Devils back on their heels a little bit, and they were pushing really, really hard to end that game and end that series in regulation. Didn't get it done, but yeah, I thought especially in the second half or so of that third period, I thought the Hurricanes played really well.
Yes, they did. They were really they were matching the desperations the Devils was playing with to keep their season alive, and the Hurricanes were playing with the desperation to end it. And then, of course, we get into overtime, kind of something that everyone gets a little weary of come playoff time. But the Hurricanes, I believe, were going in with some power play time, if I remember correctly, and the fact that or no, it was shortly
Yeah,
after overtime started, I believe,
yeah. I
that they
think
got a power play.
the
And
Devils had because the Devils actually I thought were the better team for the first few minutes of overtime.
yes, yeah, okay, yeah, I'm just getting my time confused. But the Hurricanes did end up getting a power play opportunity in overtime, and that ended up being the dagger because Jesper Foss ended up going down, getting his second overtime game-winning goal of the postseason for the Hurricanes to advance. And that was absolutely insane. And again, that was his second overtime game winner this postseason, and he is rolling. He's been a guy that we've been talking about of just depth guys, stepping up and getting the job done. And Jesper Foss did it once again last night.
Yeah, and you look too, that obviously that's a situation where you're kind of like, if ever there was a time for your power play to come through, it's right here in overtime with a chance to end the series. And it does. The power play, it didn't start out great. The Hurricanes really struggled in the
Hmm.
faceoff circle last night, and that was part of the problem early in that power play. They couldn't win a faceoff to get set up. They
Hmm.
finally do. You have that second period or unit that Rod had just kind of thrown together. Jesper Foss gets it, does what he does, gets in front of the net. Jesperi Kokaniemi takes a really good, sharp shot from the faceoff circle that Foss tips in, and Shane Gostisbehere too,
Hmm.
who's done a really good job since he's come here of quarterback in that second power play unit. Gets the puck at the point, settles it, surveys things, slows it down just a little bit, and makes the nice pass over to Kokaniemi at the circle in a prime shooting position. There's been, if I had to pick an unsung hero in this series, just someone that we haven't talked about a ton, it would probably be Gostisbehere because there's been a few goals where he's, made a really nice pass, put a puck, right in a forward's wheelhouse to shoot it. And you really don't notice him in a bad way very
Hmm.
often, which is always a good thing for a defenseman. And I think he's really played a role in solidifying that third pair and making it what it is because I think him and Chatfield are easily it's a third pair you can actually rely on instead of just oh god these guys are on the ice like just get them like 6 or 7 minutes so our top guys don't get tired like the Hurricanes can actually roll three defensive pairings that they can rely on right now with the way that those guys have played.
Yeah, it's not a glorified AHL defensive pairing that they've had the past couple seasons, which is really, really nice. And you talk about how good he's played, this playoff and this series. He's a UFA coming up, and you gotta think, he's done everything they wanted him to do since they traded for him, and it does kind of make you wonder, all right, is he gonna get an extension? If the price is right, they're not going to give him super crazy money or anything like that. But he's definitely making a case for himself to be handed an extension for sure. And another guy that has played really well last night that we've talked about already is, of course, Frederick Anderson. He stopped 27 of 29 shots he faced. He's 2-0 in potential series clinching games this postseason. And this was his first series clinching win since 2015. So it's been a while for him. And he now has a 5-0 record in series clinching games. And just in his playoff appearances with the Hurricanes, this year, he has a 1.80 goals against average, a .931 save percentage, and he's playing like the number one goaltender the Hurricanes wanted when they signed him.
Starting to think maybe he wasn't the problem in Toronto.
Yeah.
Because I mean, you look at what his playoff career there, the way he started it, his playoff career here in Carolina. Like you said, he's played really well. He's done what you want your number one goaltender to do. He made the thing he did really in this series. Again, I keep going back to is he made the timely saves. He made
Mm-hmm.
the saves when like the Devils are pushing early in a game, and if they score a couple, then the Hurricanes are out of it. Like in Game 4, like last night, like in the second period last night when they could have made it 3-1. Even like in Game 2, if I remember right, like the Hurricanes are up. Or no, it was in the first period, the first 10 minutes of that game, he kept the Devils off the scoreboard and eventually let the Hurricanes take over and dominate. Game 6 against the Islanders, the Hurricanes were terrible for the first two periods of that game.
Mm-hmm.
And Frederick Anderson kept them in it, only down one, so that Sebastian Aho could tie it in the third when they finally got to their game and they could win it in overtime. So, no, he's he didn't. We didn't get to see him in the playoffs last year. We didn't get to see him for the first 5 games of the Islanders series this year. His Hurricanes playoff career has certainly been worth the wait, and we are definitely not sitting here talking about a return trip to the Eastern Conference Final if not for what he did in this series.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely for sure. He is definitely doing like Gostisbehere. Everything the Hurricanes want him to do, he's doing it. And we will give some quick thoughts heading into the Eastern Conference Final right after this quick break, folks. All right, it is time to talk about the Eastern Conference Final. And obviously, we do not know who we're going to be playing as of yet. The Florida Panthers, weren't able to put the Leafs away the other night. That could be different tonight. We'll just have to wait and see. But like we talked about yesterday, the Hurricanes, being able to close out the series when they did was really important because that will give them some extra rest time because, Antti Ranta getting healthy, Teuvo Teravainen, maybe just give him extra time, before the next series starts. Not necessarily saying he's going to be playing. That's a very tough injury to come back from, especially in playoff hockey. So, being able to give these guys some extra time, I think is going to be really, really beneficial for them going forward. And, like we also mentioned, both series in the West seem like they're going to go a long time. So, of course, the Eastern Conference Final wouldn't start until, that the West is ready or just about to be ready.
We
So,
we
definitely,
think they've done it that way before. They've done it in kind of a convoluted way before with starting the East while the West series were still going on, but or vice versa.
yeah, I know it's going to be interesting to see how things go because this series did end so early and all these other series are still going on. And obviously Dallas leads their series 3-2. The Vegas Edmonton one is tied, and of course Florida leads Toronto 3-1. And we could very well see if we're going to be playing Florida tonight. Can they close out their series tonight? That's going to be very, very interesting. We talked about it a little bit yesterday. They're a team that are better than their playoff seeding says. but they're also a team right now that is hot, and that you never know what can happen when a team gets hot in the playoffs. We saw it 2019. The Hurricanes got hot at the right time and went to the conference final then. So we're just going to have to wait and see what happens there. But how do you think this rest is going to help out the Hurricanes?
Well, I think it's going to help a lot. You meant, you heard about we keep hearing about Teuvo Teravainen inching ever so slowly closer to maybe making a return. Skate being out there in a non-conference or non-contact jersey for the morning skate. Rod Brind'amour saying, obviously he was never going to play in the Devils series, but maybe, as it goes further along, opening the door to a return. So that'd be, I mean, look, he hasn't had his best overall year in terms of point production, but there's just no denying everything that a healthy Teuvo Teravainen would add to this forward group if he could come back. You've
Mhm.
got, this time of year, like we talked about, pretty much everybody is going to be banged up in some way, shape, or form. I mean, Brent Burns, he's an Iron Man. He's he may or may not be human, but he's 38 years old. He's out there, playing these huge minutes. You think he might appreciate a little bit of extra rest? A guy like Jordan Stahl, who just took the brunt of the heavy defensive matchups against that Jack Hughes line, he might like a little bit of a breather. Um,
Mhm.
so yeah, I think this is going to be really, really helpful for the Hurricanes, and it lets if you think you're going to go with Frederick Anderson as your guy too, give him some rest because he just played what 6 games in a row for the
Mhm.
first time this series. So if you think he's the guy going into that game one of the Eastern Conference Final, and at this point, why wouldn't you? Then I think some days off for him would be helpful too.
Yeah, I do think this rest is going to be very, very beneficial for all the reasons you mentioned. And obviously they're not practicing today, but they'll get back at it tomorrow, I believe. And that was something we talked about yesterday is the rest versus rust argument. And this team, they're not gonna, take a whole bunch of time off. It's not gonna be like the all-star break where you're on vacation. That's not gonna be the case. They're having a day off today, to do their thing, rest, obviously. I know Rod and I think a select few players will speak to the media later on this afternoon if they haven't already. But being able to just rest and then tomorrow they're back at it. They know what they got to work on. Obviously, power play is going to be something that they practice a lot because it has been kind of Jackal and Hyde. You don't necessarily know what you're gonna get with it, but yeah, I'm not really worried about any sort of rust going in to this next series. I think the Hurricanes they have the experience. They know what they got to do, and it's not like again no knock against the Devils because we were there before as well, but the inexperienced aspect of it. This team they know what they got to do. They know what it takes to win in the playoffs. They've been wanting to get back here to the conference final for a long time now. They've been wanting to get over this hump into the Stanley Cup final, and I'm not worried about any rust. I think they're going to be pretty darn ready, they end up playing.
Yeah, I agree for sure, and I think maybe you can have a little team watch party tonight for that game 5 in Toronto. Do a little scouting and see what you're going to be up against.
Yeah, we're just going to have to wait and see what happens in terms of our opponent. And I said, at the start of the playoff, I felt that, they needed to at least get back to the conference final for this playoff season, all that to not be considered as a disappointment because you look at the past few years, especially last year and the year before, where they were so good and they just came up short, kind of like Tampa Bay in like the mid to late 2010s, where they just couldn't get over that playoff hump. And now they're back here. And now that they're back to the conference final, do you feel that this season and postseason has been considered can be considered a success?
It's really interesting that you bring that up because I had a friend ask me this question. I think it was after the Hurricanes went up 2-0 in this series about, hey, you and some other guys like were pretty pessimistic going into the playoffs, which I mean, I was, given the
Hmm.
injuries and everything like that. And I was kind of like, well, with the injuries, I thought, I wouldn't have considered the season much of a disappointment if they had lost in 6 or 7 games to the Devils. And so, yeah, I think getting back to the Eastern Conference Final makes this season really successful, really, a great accomplishment. But if you look at the way that they've played now without these guys and the way that they've gotten here and the fact that, because going into the playoffs, you figure they go to the conference finals and then it's whatever, because you're assuming at that point that if they get there, they're going to be playing the Boston Bruins, the best
Hmm.
team in hockey all year, the record setting historic team, and now they're not. They're going to have home ice again. They're going to be playing probably Florida, maybe the Leafs. So I don't know. I feel like it's still no. I mean, getting to the Eastern Conference Final makes this a great season for sure. But I also think there's a lot more expectations going into the conference final now, and there should be because this team has
Yeah.
proven, I think, through 2 series that it can play really well, that it can get it done even without the guys that it's missing. Especially, again, if you play Florida, I mean, like we said, Florida's a team. They're better than their seed. They're a good team, but you're going to have home ice. You're going to be favored. So, opportunities to have a truly special season and contend for a cup don't come around, very often. I mean, I'm sure after 2019, none of us thought that it would probably take until 2023 for the Hurricanes to even get back to the conference final, to the final four. So I think they have a really special opportunity in front of them, and this is the time to take advantage of it.
Yeah, I agree as well. I was fully predicting them to be playing Boston, and then that's it. Boston, because they were so good, I was fully expecting. All right, they're just gonna go and win the whole thing, but that's not gonna be the case now. So yeah, I do feel that there is a lot more expectations on the Hurricanes because that behemoth of the Bruins isn't there anymore. And they're like, home ice runs through Raleigh now. And it doesn't matter who we play, whether it's Toronto, Florida, whether in the final it's Dallas, Seattle, Vegas, Edmonton. No, they come here. We have home ice advantage. And I do feel that that does, because they are the top remaining team, that does put a bit more expectation on the team. And I think that the guys that the Hurricanes have now, they know what it takes to win. We've said that a lot today. We've said that throughout the playoffs. They know what it takes to win. Even the young guys, even Seth Jarvis, he knows what it takes to win. He's been to the playoffs. He's won a bunch of games with the Hurricanes. He knows what it takes to win. And then obviously the older you get on the roster, even more so. You look at a guy like Jordan Stahl. He knows what it takes. He's won a Stanley Cup before. Antti Ranta, he knows what it takes to win. He's won a Stanley Cup before. Brent Burns, yeah, he's been to the final before. He's been playing for forever and a day. And these guys know what it takes to win now. So the weight of expectation, I don't think it's going to be as big of a factor as you know, maybe a team like Boston. They had such a crazy good regular season. You go into a playoff, like, all right, everyone's expecting you to win the Stanley Cup. Now go do it. And I feel, that, yeah, that just wasn't the case for them. And I think the Hurricanes can fully handle the expectations that are being put on them right now.
Yeah, Rob Brind'amour talked about this after. I actually watched his full press conference after the game last night. He talked a lot about this, about them getting more experience, them getting, almost like you have to learn to lose before
Hmm.
you can learn to win. And certainly you look at, um, since they made that run to the conference final, you look at the 2020 bubble against the Boston Bruins. You look at 2021 when they ran into the buzzsaw that was the Tampa Bay Lightning. You look at the disappointment against the Rangers last year. This is a team that's been on the other side of things and knows, I think now has that understanding of what that, next step further that you have to take it is to get it done.
Yeah, I fully agree. We both are in agreement. They know what it takes to win now, and they just got to wait to see who they're gonna play in the conference final, and then who they would potentially play in the Stanley Cup final. This team, I feel they're ready. I feel they have what it takes. Even with the guys they're missing, they're showing that hey, this isn't going to be the deciding factor. We got guys that can step up and get the job done. We've seen it in sports, all the time of, being down key players and guys stepping up and getting the job done. We've seen it before, and it does feel like, hey, now could potentially be the Hurricanes got time to have these guys step up and get this team over the hump. But we will continue to talk about the conference final in the coming episodes. And in the meantime, make sure you are following us on Twitter at LO_Hurricanes, myself on Twitter at Jared Ellis _96, and Andrew at A Schnitt 53, the old school Jeff Skinner shout out there. And I always got to mention that too. But as always, folks, enjoy the win, enjoy the trip back to the conference final. Make sure you are taking pictures if you're going to the games, taking pictures at your watch parties, whatever it may be. Enjoy it, folks. These kinds of things don't come around all the time. You never know. Like Andrew said, who would have thought it would have taken the Hurricanes this long to get back? So enjoy it, folks. And as always, let's go, Canes.